From the News Channel 5 Network, this is SportsLine.
Welcome into SportsLine, everybody. The Wednesday extravaganza right here on News Channel 5 Plus. I'm Jon Burton with you for the next hour. Happy to be along on this Wednesday evening, this cold Wednesday evening here in late January. Can you believe January is almost over with? Seems like we're just ringing in the new year. Heck, it seems like it was just Christmas just a couple of minutes ago. A lot going on, obviously, in the world of sports. Both Vanderbilt and Tennessee men's basketball in action today. The Vols had to come back to beat the Florida Gators at the TBA 78-71. Santiago Vescovi getting the 23 points for the victorious Vols in that one. Late second half, it is Vanderbilt on the road. Bear with me while I check the score here. They're trailing at South Carolina 69-61 with under a minute to play, so it looks like the Commodores are going to go down in defeat. Had the lead for parts of this game. C. Lane will have complete highlights of both those games for you tonight over on News Channel 5 Sports at about 10:21. Hockey last night, the Predators getting a win in Seattle over the expansion Kraken 4-2. They're in Edmonton tomorrow night as they continue their West Coast road swing. So now you're all up to date. And we all know what you want to talk about tonight, folks. The Tennessee Titans, one and done for a second year in a row in the playoffs, losing at home, of course, to the Cincinnati Bengals. What happened? Where does this team go from here? I'm sure the last couple of nights you've been burning up the phone lines with Steve Lehman on this very program, SportsLine. But we're going to get perspective from our guy. He is, of course, our Titans and NFL analyst. You see and hear him every Sunday night in the Electric Power Company Sunday Sports Central. And he is, of course, from Outkick360. Our guy joining us from his beautiful, spacious home studio in beautiful Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Look at him, folks. Handsome as ever, the great Jonathan Hutton. Jay Hutt, good evening. Welcome back. It's great to have another evening with Jonathan Hutton.
And it's always great to be with Jonathan Burton as well. Two Jonathans talking football, although I did not expect to be chatting with you about a season recap in a way right now, right? Like you and I should be doing a special on News Channel 5 previewing the AFC Championship game. I'm still stunned, honestly, that they let that game go the way they did.
That's where I wanted to start. I'm still in shock, Jay Hutt. I mean, it was all surreal watching Tannehill throw that last interception, and trust me, we're going to get into Tannehill as we go along. And then watching Joe Burrow get them into field goal range and seeing Evan McPherson kicking that 52-yarder to end the Titans season. I'm down in the tunnel doing post-game talking to the players, and I still can't believe even a few days afterwards, I have to remind myself there is no Titans game this week. I mean, it's an absolute shock. And Jay Hutt, also this, You're born and raised here. You've been here ever since the Titans became the Tennessee Titans. I've been here going on a decade now. And one thing I've noticed about this fan base, a little bit different than the one I left in Pittsburgh, right? Very passionate, very, not saying the Titans fans aren't passionate, but, when the Titans lose a big game, it's kind of like, that kind of sucks. But you know what? That's our Titans. We'll get them next year. That's not the case this year. I don't know if you noticed that on your show. I certainly have on my show. John, the Titans fans are pissed. They're angry. They want answers, and they want a pound of flesh.
Well, and rightfully so. I mean, they've been building to this, and I can tell you, no one's more pissed off about it than John Robinson and Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams Strunk and the ownership. I mean, they have been building up. If you think of it from a staircase perspective, they're not, they're no longer looked at as a team that is on the way to the postseason, right? Like building up. They're there.
Yep. And
now the expectation is, okay, do something while you're there. And I think the fan base recognizes the window of opportunity where you've got Henry in his second contract. You have Ryan Tannehill making $30 million this year because he restructured his contract to bring in Julio Jones, and they paid Julio in full. You've got A.J. Brown, who is a superstar in the making. He's already one of the best offensive players in the NFL. And on top of that, last year, you being the Titans, corrected the issues on defense not just to make an adequate defense, which what I was expecting. I was expecting to go from the bottom of the league to adequate, and the offense would take the next step. And on top of everything else, John, just looking at that game and what it represented, it didn't matter if they lost 5 games and they came in with 12 wins, or they were 17-0. They could do no better during the regular season than hosting a game at Nissan Stadium as the number 1 seed. Like, that was exactly what they had earned on the regular season slate, where they overcame all those injuries. They stuck with their identity, which was a run-first, grind-it-out, physical, tone-setting football team. Vrabel instilled that because that's exactly how he is. They are their head coach. And the way they lost that game in the most critical moments, playoffs are about moments, right? And the Titans did not seize theirs. And it's really hard to understand how they didn't, given the fact that they sacked Burrow 9 times, really sacked him 11 times. 2 of them didn't count.
Right.
Defensively, you hold them to 19 points. You allow 1 touchdown the entire game to Joe Burrow and that explosive offense. And, oh, by the way, it wasn't in the passing game. They allowed a rushing touchdown, so it's not like Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow crushed them the way they did Kansas City. No, it was the opposite. It was the returning star power on offense that let you down. You go 1 for 8 on 3rd down. You turn it over 3 times on the first play of the game. I mean, it's just extremely disappointing because of the buildup of Henry's return and the fact that, again, you get the number 1 seed, you have home field advantage, you're a game away from hosting the AFC Championship game, and you can't score more than 19 points. I was dumbfounded that night, and I know you joined us late because you were in the tunnel. Mm-hmm. Steve and I, it was really hard to describe the vibe.
Yeah,
because it felt a lot like the Baltimore Ravens loss in 2008. But this one felt different because you felt like the opportunity was really there to go win a championship. In 2008, it was a defensive-led team where you had a couple pieces on offense, but not the elite power at wide receiver and running back. And turns out the quarterback is the issue right now.
Yeah, and I promise you we're going to talk about Tannehill in just a little bit as we go along here. A lot to unpack here with this Titans season coming to a sudden end. But I think you put it best, Jonathan. I mean, I hate to say it, but, 12 wins, overcoming all these injuries to key players and illnesses and all these different things. Your best player going down, for 2 months, and you still managed 12 wins. As you said, the top seed in the AFC. This was a wasted season, Jonathan. And now you're talking about, like you said, that window starting to close a little bit. This will not be the same Titans team next year that we saw this year. Harold Landry might be moving on. There could, there's going to be key pieces, parts to this team that probably won't be here next year. And, listen, Derrick Henry's great, but the clock is ticking on his production, right? I mean, he's already suffered his first serious debilitating injury. So, man, there's no other way to put it. This was a wasted season.
Yeah, and then that's why it's so disappointing. I'm with you. And I was on board with last year being wasted as well because they put up some offensive numbers that were incredible. And the waste came on defense, right, where they just failed to address the misery that was 3rd down defense. And then they did it in the offseason. They did it through pass rush, through free agency. John, the other remarkable thing about this is, other than Elijah Molden, it's not like they got a big boost from their rookie class. That's 2 rookie classes in a row that we're not pointing to, but they're still overcoming that. The shortfalls in that, they're overcoming by the production of knowing the guys that they want and the type of players in free agency they're bringing in, whether that's star power like Bud Dupree or it's a guy who's on the street in week 7 like Deontay Foreman. It's just all it all came together except for at kickoff time. I mean, think about how everything built up for the game. Henry's activated. You've got the crowd that they're not playing the Bills or the Chiefs last week. They're playing the Bengals. And I said this, and I'm sure you agree. If the Chiefs or the Bills are playing, we see a lot more of the other team in there, right? Like the fan base. That was the Bengals drove down, but they weren't getting in the stadium the same way. That felt like 70,000 Titans fans. and you have a great anthem, and you've got the everything, all the build up, the tailgating all day. Right. And then Tannehill gets the ball and throws the pick.
Henry gets introduced last. The crowd goes absolutely berserk. Yep.
Yes. And the energy is just sucked out of the stadium on that pick. And they, you just started looking around going, this sounds like just a normal Sunday game all of a sudden. Yeah. And it was just not there. And that's what's so disappointing. In the biggest moment, they weren't ready to play.
Yeah, it really is disappointing. I mean, Jay Hutt, you know me. I tell it like it is. I'm not a homer. I never have been since day one. I don't necessarily root for the teams I cover. I don't root against them either. But I remember, getting mic'd up in studio a few weeks ago, and, Carrie Sharp asked me, she said, so what do you think? What do you think about the Titans? And I looked at her and I said, this might be their year. Just given all the things that they had overcome, all the games that they pulled out. Where, I think about that game Halloween, actually, ironically, the day that Henry got hurt. They had no business winning that game in Indy. Yeah. But they did. And beating the Chiefs and beating the Bills and beating all those teams with winning records and beating all those teams that made the playoffs last year. I remember just thinking, maybe this is just their year. They're not going to be denied. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
And the timetable of Henry's return, too. He got hurt that day on October 31st. But had he been hurt a week or two after that, he doesn't make the return for the postseason. They get the bye week. John, the Bengals have played now 11 straight weeks without rest. The Titans had their bye week. They had the mini bye after the San Francisco game on Thursday night, and they had the first week of the playoffs off. They had 2.5 weeks off while the Bengals were playing the entire stretch, and they needed it to get healthy with 91 players that they played through and the whole record-setting thing injury-wise, and then Henry, their main guy, getting back. And again, it was set up, the ball was on the tee, and they swung and hit the tee, and the ball fell to home plate, right? This was T-ball, and they weren't the last batter. Whenever I played T-ball, you had the last batter. Everyone batted around one time, and then you switched.
Right.
The last batter struck out in this case, and you got 0 runs that inning. It was terrible, and I don't blame the fans for being upset. And for the first time, I don't know if you agree with this. This to me is the first time that the entire Nashville media and fan base is unanimous on what's wrong with this team.
Oh yeah.
And everyone, from PK, who's always negative, to Teron Davenport, who's breaking down film, you and I, who are just analyzing what we see in front of us.
Right.
Everybody.
Teresa Walker, who's very nuanced. I mean, everybody. The list goes on and on. Right.
Yes. Yes.
Terry, Johnny Glennon. I mean, the whole crew.
Everybody agrees that what happened in this game, if you're looking in a mirror, if you're looking in the Titans mirror and you see the reflection, you got to do something about it because it continues to repeat itself in postseason play.
All right, we're just getting started as we break down the Titans' loss to the Bengals in the AFC playoffs. We'll look ahead, but first we got to look back, and when we come back, we're going there. We got to talk about the quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, and the offensive coordinator, Todd Downing. Is there a future in Tennessee with those two individuals? More as we spend another evening with Jonathan Hutton. So great to have Jay Hutt with us here on SportsLine. Stay with us. We're coming back.